all of a sudden they got a distance program like 2 days later, and so they can rip you off even further and teach you how to protest, and then you get compete for jobs at Starbucks when you get out. So my school teaches the hardcore techniques that every business on earth needs. And a little later, I'll tell you how you can get a full scholarship there if you're in my mentor program. All right, let's get to the main event. David Meerman Scott spotted the real-time marketing revolution in its infancy, and I believe it because I've been watching this guy for years. And he wrote 5 books about it, including The New Roles of Marketing and PR, which is the one I started with. And now it's in its 7th edition. More than 400,000 copies sold in English, and it's available in 29 languages from Albanian to Vietnamese. Wow. Now, David says now the pendulum has swung too far in the direction of superficial online communications. Oh, boy, do we know that. Tech-weary and bot-wary people are hungry for true human connection. So organizations have learned to win by developing what Dave calls Fanocracy, and that's the subject of his Wall Street Journal bestseller book, and he'll be telling us about it today. And he tapped into the mindset that relationships and customers are more important than the products they sell to them. So, hey, David, are you ready to screw the commute?
Hey, Tom, absolutely, which I originally did 19 years ago. Haven't commuted for a very long time.
Oh,
Happy about that too.
That is beautiful. We're going to see what you're doing now, and then we want to take you back to see your entrepreneurial journey. But first thing I got to hit him up with, and this is a good lesson for everybody, is you must be royalty or something, right? With the middle name Meerman, right?
No, not at all. I did that for a very particular business purpose.
I know.
20 years
Tell
ago.
him about it.
Yeah, so there are a whole boatload of David Scotts out there. David is my first name. Meerman is my middle name. Scott is my last name. And there's a whole bunch of David Scotts. There's a member of Congress from Georgia named David Scott. There's a professional triathlete named David Scott. David Scott walked on the moon as the commander of Apollo 15. None of those people are me. So I went out using my middle name when I started my entrepreneurial journey. And it was among the best decisions I ever made, because on the web, on Google, in the social networks, I am the only David Meerman Scott in the entire world. And had I gone with David Scott without my middle name, there would have been thousands and thousands of other people with the same name. So choosing a unique name, very, very, very important if you want to screw the commute successfully.
That's right. And I recognize that from you right off in the beginning, because that's what we do around here. And yeah, you could have got buried forever. Never.
Oh, it would have been brutal. I never could have competed with those other people. So it's all good. I made that right choice when I did.
Now tell them about when I kind of was exposed to your book, the PR rules, the new rules of PR, yeah, marketing and PR, and I just loved that. But you've said that there's a transition going on. But tell them a little bit about that, because I still love the concept of newsjacking, but transition from that into your current Fanocracy concept.
So about 20 years ago was when I decided I wanted to go out on my own, because what I was seeing at that point was that marketing was completely changing. For a long time, marketing had been simply about buying expensive advertising, whether that's on television or magazines or radio or billboards or whatever it is, direct mail. All of those are forms of buying attention. And I saw early on that the web allowed us to generate attention for free. So I started to write and speak and do some consulting about that idea 20 years ago. Then I decided to write this book, The New Rules of Marketing and PR, which really identified the first book in the world that identified that marketing is not about advertising, it's about publishing content on the web. And then soon after that, all kinds of social networks started, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all the others. And so as you rightly said, for the past 13 years since that book first came out, I've been doing a bunch of different editions of it. And we're now in the 7th edition. So I'm constantly updating it. But over the last 5 years or so, what I noticed is that lots and lots of people have started to abuse the channel of online communications. And we all feel that, you get spammed and your social networks are clogged with all kinds of nonsense. And it's really hard sometimes to break through. So I recognized that people are looking for a true human connection. It's no longer just about the electronic ways of communicating. It's a human connection, which, by the way, you also can have electronically. So I dug into that concept with this new book I call Fanocracy, turning fans into customers and customers into fans, which I wrote with my daughter, Reiko. She's now 27 years old. We started
Perfect.
on this journey together. She was 22, to research and write about fandom. How does fandom happen? What's going on in our brains when we become fans of something, and how organizations can tap into fandom, because ultimately we want those human connections in our life.
Wow, yeah, and that's a beautiful story of working with your daughter, and she's the perfect. I teach people a lot of not renting, but recruiting young people to help them in their internet stuff, and they can figure stuff out in 2 seconds that would take somebody, me my age, like 2 months to figure out. So that's
Yeah, well, you know
perfect.
what's really interesting about working with her. There's a number of things, but two things that jump to mind immediately about working with my daughter is, first of all, we're completely different people. Even though she grew up in my house, obviously we're different generations and different genders. My wife is Japanese, so my daughter is mixed race, and I love the live music, as you said in the open, 804 live concerts,
Wow.
75 Grateful Dead concerts. My daughter is hugely into Harry Potter, so we love different things. And when we came together, we very much came at this idea of fandom from very different perspectives. She's a young millennial woman. I'm a tail end of the baby boomer guy, and so we came at it with very different outlooks. And putting those ideas together was great to create a book that's way, way, way better than I could have done myself. But the other thing that was awesome about working with her is that it brought us closer together. I mean, writing a book is a very much an entrepreneurial journey, and we became entrepreneurs together. We collaborated on writing a book and building out the website for the book, which is fanocracy.com, and shooting videos to promote the book, and getting onto podcasts, and doing all kinds of things to research, write, and then promote the book. And that brought our relationship much tighter than it was previously. And I've only got one child, and my wife and I and my daughter, we're very much a team of three people. But being able to embark on this project with just the two of us brought us closer together in a really, really cool way. And what better way to bring yourself together with your child than to become entrepreneurs together, right?
I'm totally for it, and I'd like to interview her because we do special youth editions, and I'd love to have her on without you
Oh, I'd love to.
dragging her
I'd
down,
love
man.
to organize that. So
Yeah,
let's definitely do that.
yeah. I have never had a job, obviously, with the name of this podcast, and so I'm totally into assisting young people into this field because it's not. I mean, you know this as well as anybody. There's no more gold watches after 30 years at the business,
No,
right?
no, no,
You're
no. I mean,
lucky
you're
if you're
lucky.
there
You're
30
not,
minutes.
you're lucky to last 30 years. Most people get the heave ho in their 40s or 50s if they want to stick out the corporate world. So, yeah, no, it's you gotta fend for yourself. And let me share just one
Yeah.
more thing about this super cool relationship that my daughter and I had. Is I was doing a speaking engagement. I speak at Tony Robbins' business mastery events, and Tony's an awesome guy. And I was presenting in front of 2,500 people, and I came back from the presentation, and that evening I learned that Fanocracy made the Wall Street Journal bestseller list.
Beautiful.
And so one of the coolest things I've ever done was early the next morning, because we found out very late at night, but early the next morning, I texted my daughter. It was like 7 o'clock in the morning. And I said, when you're up and you have your tea, give me a call. And so, 7:30 or whatever it was, my mobile phone rang in the hotel room I was in. at the Tony Robbins event, and I said, "Congratulations, Reiko, you are a Wall Street Journal best-selling author." And what was so cool about that was our entrepreneurial journey, kind of having a badge of honor, if you will, or a
Hmm.
gold check mark next to it, because and she couldn't believe it. She's like, "Me? A best-selling author? Really? Wow, how cool." So it was just a really super cool thing to be able to share with her after all of the hard work over 5 years that we did on that book.
No question about it. So let's take you back a little bit. Were you entrepreneurial as a young child?
Yeah, I was. I did the lawn mowing thing.
Yeah.
I had a paper route. I did that kind of stuff, and so I very much was. And then I did enter the corporate world, though. After I got out of school, I went to Wall Street,
Whoa.
and
Okay.
my first job was on a bond trading desk, and oh my God, did I hate it. It was so not for me. It was not my style at all. Just, young men screaming into telephones was
Right.
not what I was about. But I did find that I became really super interested in the data behind the bond trading that the bond traders were doing. So I went to work. My entire corporate career I spent in the real-time financial information business, for companies like Dow Jones and Reuters. But the first company that I worked with in that business was a small economic consulting company. And fortunately, I embarked within a corporate career in very entrepreneurial jobs. My first job, I was 26 years old. I went by myself to Tokyo to open the Asian office
Wow.
of this small economic consulting firm. I was the only person who was working for this. It was a tiny company, 10 people. I was the only person working outside of Wall Street. And I was living by myself in Tokyo, running this outpost of this business. So it was totally entrepreneurial. And then I started to work. I did that for 2 years, and then worked for another company where I was in charge of building up all of their Asian marketing operations. And I felt like that was very entrepreneurial as well. So even though I was in big corporations, I was definitely doing an entrepreneurial role. So it really got my head spinning around what I wanted to do throughout my life of never just being a cog in the wheel, always having some form of entrepreneurialism, whether it was within a company. And then soon after, when I decided to go out on my own at age 40, 20 years ago, was when I really became an entrepreneur, and have been happily unemployed for 20 years.
I know who would hire us right now.
Yeah. Oh my God. Right. Exactly right. If I wouldn't last. I get sacked within 10 minutes
Oh,
if I
no kidding. Yeah, I've
find a
been
company.
ragging for years that I can't stand corporate stuff because it takes a 2-week committee meeting to go to the bathroom. So 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 when you were doing the stuff in Tokyo, though, I understand English is kind of the business language of the world, but what kind of barriers did you have working in outside the U.S.?
Well, so I was in the bond markets, and it was the typically focused very heavily on the American bond market, so U.S. Treasury bonds and so on. And so that was primarily a business conducted in English. So I spoke zero Japanese when I went over to Japan. Did learn quite a bit, enough to be quite good conversationally, but not good enough to use it in business.
Got it.
So I was able to use English in business. And then soon after, I had regional roles throughout the Asia Pacific region. So Australia, New Zealand, and Thailand, and Indonesia, and Singapore, and Hong Kong, and so on. I moved to Hong Kong for a couple of years as well. And so the language never became an issue from the business perspective. Of course, it would have been fabulous to have business Japanese, but I didn't. So I was able to make do with it. But I think that's right, that English is pretty much the international language of high level business, at least, not of all businesses, but of the kind of business I was doing in the bond market. It certainly was.
Yeah, now you speak all over the place, and I went to Chinese University in Hong Kong for about 2 weeks on my brother's MBA program, and but I've spoken all over the world, and there's a lot of things that you just wouldn't think about. Just speaking in the U.S., for instance, I think I was in Thailand or Malaysia or somewhere, and I normally, go and shake people's hands. Hey, come on and sit up front, and I try to be really nice. But I would have put the Asian young man in a really bad position because the front row is only for the executives.
Right. It's for the more senior people.
Right.
Yeah.
So he would have been like, he didn't want to offend me, but then he can't go and jump in front of his boss. If I hadn't known that, I could have really caused some,
Oh, I know. I know.
hassle.
There are some funky things that you need to be aware of. I mean, I try my best before, and I've spoken in 47 countries.
Yeah.
I've
Oh my God.
visited 107 countries in my life, all 7 continents, and delivered speeches in 47 different countries. And I really try my best before I go somewhere new to at least learn enough to not make any dreadful mistakes. But I recognize I'm never going to be perfect. But I think if you have a smile on your face and you
Mm-hmm.
have a good heart, that even if you screw up, that you're going to be okay. But one of the weirdest ones I ever did was I presented in Saudi Arabia. And the reason it was so weird was because it was all men, zero women, not a
Wow.
single woman in the entire event. And I was like hundreds and hundreds of people. I spoke at a consumer products good marketing conference. So think shampoo and toothpaste kind of
Mm-hmm.
products. And it was super interesting to have a chance to visit Saudi Arabia. But I got to say, doing business when it's all men was really, really weird. And I wanted no part of wanting to do that any more than just trying it once.
Now, in Japan, don't they not look at you when you're on stage? Is that true?
No, they generally do, but you have to keep their interest. Like anywhere, you have to keep their interest.
I thought that
And
in some countries making eye contact with them is they purposely don't, but it could have been a lot of years ago. A lot of people are
yeah, I mean,
westernized
there
now.
might have been pockets of that,
Hmm.
but I don't ever recall speaking anywhere that it was quite that bad. But I have spoken in places where there isn't much reaction. They
Right.
sit with their arms folded and take notes. I have experienced quite a lot where there's no eye contact simply because they're taking notes. But I don't recall any time where I've been where they're not looking at you purposely because that's the thing they don't do. But yeah, they feel like they have to write down every single word you say, and therefore they're not looking at you.
Right.
Is fairly common in some cultures.
So anyway, you gotta prepare before you go into these things. But
I think that's right. I think you learn the 4 or 5 things that are important to either do or not do. The other thing that's weird is clothing. It's in here in the U.S. I usually wear jeans, a nice shirt, sometimes a jacket, but in certain cultures, it's always a suit and
right,
tie.
right.
And so I have to be prepared not to screw that one up. I remember once I spoke in the Netherlands and I was way overdressed and they laughed at me. It's like, what the hell are you doing? And I go, I'm sorry, I screwed up. I didn't think about it ahead of time.
uh, okay, so I think you have 11 books out and something like that. And
Yeah, 12
12,
actually at this
12
point.
Fanocracy. There's one that's probably if they couldn't get Fanocracy, probably the best one on earth is Marketing Lessons from the Grateful Dead.
Yeah. Oh my God. What a super fun project that was. I co-wrote that Marketing Lessons from the Grateful Dead with Brian Halligan. Brian is the CEO of a company called HubSpot, and Bill Walton, the famous NBA basketball
Hmm.
Hall of Famer. And what a super cool group of 3 guys to write a book. So Brian is an entrepreneur. He started this company, HubSpot, back in 2007. Fortunately, I've been a part of his advisory board ever since the very beginning. But HubSpot just crossed the $1 billion in annual revenue mark. And so Brian, super successful entrepreneurial CEO, he employs 4,000 people. And last time I checked, his company, which is traded on the New York Stock Exchange, the market valuation was $24 billion.
Wow.
and he's a freaking deadhead like me, just out there having fun. And truly, he's just like us, Tom. He's just out there having fun
Hmm.
and enjoying life and going to Grateful Dead concerts with his buddy David. And then we decided to write a book together and got Bill Walton roped into it. And then all of a sudden, Brian starts this company that becomes just fabulously successful. One of the most successful software startups in the last decade. So how cool is that?
Yeah, really. And if I was him, I'd sell instantly because I'm so afraid of like the stuff with like Parlor, like all of a sudden their market cap is going crazy and then boom, they disappear like the next day. So,
Well, they've got tons of fundamentals, so they're going to be around for the long haul. But interesting story about Brian and this idea of enjoying yourself is when he first went public. They have to do these earnings calls with Wall Street. It's required when you're listed as a public company. You have to speak to Wall Street every quarter and tell about your quarterly results. And Brian said, I want to play Grateful Dead music while we're waiting on hold for people to join. And then all of the Wall Street investment bankers said, oh, no, you can't do that. You can't play Grateful Dead music. He goes, yes, I can. This is my company and I'm going to play Grateful Dead music. So he figured out how to get the company that was running the earnings call to actually play Grateful Dead music while people were waiting on hold. So we did that. And then he gave his presentation, and the very first question that anyone asked as a public company was this guy from JP Morgan. I forget his first name. Let's call him John. He goes, this is John from JP Morgan. Brian, congratulations on going public. Congratulations on your first quarter. And thank you for having Grateful Dead music on hold. Right? So it just goes to show you, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you've got to carve your own path and don't do what everybody else
Exactly. Now, one of my students, actually, he was worked for me when I grabbed him out of high school. He just sold Pluto.tv to Viacom for $340 million. I said,
Nice.
yeah, I said, you're buying dinner next time I see you, buddy.
No kidding.
Yeah,
right?
He called me from a yacht in Greece with a couple supermodels on
nice. So. I love it. Yeah. With my buddy Brian, last time we went to a Grateful Dead show, he said, just come on. I'll just hire a private plane. We don't have to screw around. We'll just do it right. So, screw the commute, right? Might as well have a private plane to take you to a Grateful Dead concert.
Yeah, but then that means you're going to have to spend more money in Panama. I understand you are quite passionate about the environment, and you offset your carbon footprint by, tell them about that.
I do. It's very, very important to me to pay attention to the world that we live in many different ways. And one way in particular is the carbon footprint that I have, because I travel a lot. Well, this year because of the pandemic, not so much, but normally I'm on airplanes almost every week traveling to speak at conferences. So I was really worried about that. So I actually am a part owner in a 10,000 acre nature preserve in a rainforest in Panama.
Wow.
And the amount of the investment that I made and the proportion of this 10,000 acre nature preserve that I personally own way more than offsets my carbon footprint for the rest of my life, plus my wife, plus my daughter, plus my mother and other people in my family. So I feel good that I have managed to preserve this very important rainforest in Panama together with some other people. And as part of part of that makes me be able to sleep at night around just the fact that, I get on airplanes pretty frequently, and airplanes burn a lot of fuel and they're bad for the environment.
Well, you ought to teach that to all the celebrities and politicians that talk about it, but then they don't do it. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually not that difficult and not in the grand scheme of things that expensive to offset all of your carbon, but so few people actually do it.
I haven't been on a plane for a year and a half, and I'm thrilled to death about it.
I know. I actually haven't been enjoying it.
Yeah.
I went almost 30 years getting on airplanes, 100,000 miles a year plus.
Right.
And I haven't been on an airplane since March 4th, 2020,
Yep.
and so I'm sure it'll be probably a year and a half by the time I get on a plane again. So, yeah, it's super cool actually.
I like it. I like it.
I don't have to deal with TSA or
Right.
all that other stuff.
Well, we got to take a brief sponsor break. When we come back, we'll come back and want to hear more details about Fanocracy, and we'll see what a typical day looks like for David now. So about 23 years ago, folks, I kind of turned the internet marketing guru world on its head, and that guys like me were charging 50 or 100 grand up front to small businesses to teach them what we knew. And I knew a lot of these guys. If you give them 50 grand up front, they'd be hiding out in Panama in the rainforest, so they wouldn't have to give you any service. So I said, that's not right for small business. So I kind of flipped it on its head and said, I'm going to charge an entry fee, but then I'm going to tie my success to your success. So for me to get my 50 grand, you have to net 200 grand. Well, people like this, and 23 years later, the program's still going strong after 1,700 students, and it's the longest running, the most unique, and the most successful internet marketing mentor program ever. And I have no trouble saying that because I triple dare people to put their programs up against mine, and nobody will do it because they'll be embarrassed and they'll go crawl under a rock somewhere because I'm just a crazy fanatic. I mean, I help people on evenings, weekends, holidays. Doesn't make any difference. I actually accidentally threw a teleclass on Thanksgiving one time because I forgot it was Thanksgiving. so it's good to have fanatics work when they're working for you. Put it that way, folks. But anyway, it's really powerful. You have an immersion weekend at the Great Internet Marketing Retreat Center in Virginia Beach. We have our own TV studio here. We shoot marketing videos for you. You are immersed with a small group here, but the rest of it is all one-on-one because I hate group coaching because if you're advanced, then the beginners are lost, and if you're the beginner, the advanced people are bored. So all of my staff is one-on-one with you. We'll even take over your computer, show you where to click. And when you get done, you have hardcore skills. I mean, we're talking not theory stuff. We're talking email marketing, chat bots, blogs, all the social media stuff, which I abhor, but it's a necessary evil. And we have people in our school making money a couple months in because every business on earth needs these skills. So if you're in my mentor program, you get a scholarship to the school as part of the deal, which you can either use yourself or gift. We had one guy join the mentor program, gifted, and he had spent $80,000 on his daughter's crappy education, and she's working a crappy job. He gifted the school to her. After 1 month, she's making $1,000 a month on the side. After 3 months, $3,000. And the last I talked to her, after 4 months in the school, hadn't even graduated yet, she was up to $6,000 a month as a side hustle. So this is extremely powerful stuff, folks. So check it out at greatinternetmarketingtraining.com. Get in touch with me. There's no high pressure here, and I'll be glad to discuss with you your future. And I'll tell you what, that scholarship for a young person in your life would be one of the best legacy gifts you could ever give them for nephew, niece, grandchild. I mean, people are giving them cars, and the cars junk in 2 years, where this would keep them from coming home and living in your basement. All right. So check it out. All right, let's get back to the main event. We're here with David Meerman Scott. I've really followed and appreciated this guy's work for many, many years. So, David, give us some more details about Fanocracy, and then tell us what the typical day looks like for you, since we're all off the road nowadays.
So Fanocracy is such an interesting concept to me because I'm such a massive live music fan, as we talked about. 804 live shows. My first one when I was age 15. And here's the reason you mentioned, how in the hell did you
exactly?
Know
how do you keep track of that?
So back when I was a teenager, I kept all my ticket stubs. And so I had maybe 100 or 200 ticket stubs. Then when I first got a computer with a spreadsheet, which would have been probably 30 years
Yeah,
ago,
right.
I started to keep a spreadsheet of the concerts I went to.
You
So
know, you're
after I
telling people the kind of mind that you have, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah,
this
yeah.
is not the typical.
I'm a consummate collector. I know I've been to 107 countries. I've been to all 50 states. I've spoken in 47 countries. I know this data because I keep this data in spreadsheets. It's super, super, super geeky. So yeah, so I know how many shows. I mean, I probably not the exact number because, who knows? There's had one too many beer and lost the ticket stub or
That's what I
whatever.
was
But
thinking.
but it's pretty darn accurate.
Okay.
So I'm a huge live music fan, and I was thinking to myself, wow. I am so passionate about the Grateful Dead. I've seen them 75 times. I wrote a book about them. I mean, I'll travel to different country to see this band play. It's really geeky around the Grateful Dead. And I was talking to Reiko, my daughter, and she told me, which I knew, but not their level of detail about her Harry Potter fandom. She's read every book multiple times, seen every movie multiple times, gone to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter in Orlando several times, traveled to London to go on the studio tour,
Wow.
and she wrote an 85,000 word alternative ending to the Harry Potter series
Jeez.
where Draco Malfoy is a spy for the Order of the Phoenix. Put that on a fan fiction site that's been downloaded thousands and thousands of
Oh,
times.
wow.
So she's dug into the world of Harry Potter. And we were both talking about how, isn't it cool that we are so into the thing that we're a fan of? And that's true of most humans. When we become a fan of something, a sports team or a sport that you love to play, or in my case, a rock band, or bird watching, or Peloton, or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is, you become a fan and you dig into it. I was thinking, well, let's look at how and why people become a fan of something, and then see if we can apply that to business, see if we can apply that to getting people to become a fan of our entrepreneurial endeavors. And so we dug into specifically the neuroscience of fandom, and we learned from talking to neuroscientists that all humans are hardwired, each of us, to want to be part of a tribe of like-minded people. And that's one of the reasons why I love going to a Grateful Dead concert is, yeah, I love the music, but it's also being part of my tribe. I can turn to anybody there, even if I've never met them, and have something in common with them. And so that's really interesting and important for all humans to have, is this idea of being a part of a tribe. So what this means is that if you're running an entrepreneurial business, you can create a tribe of people, which is exactly what you're doing, Tom. The people who follow your work, who listen to this podcast, who do your programs, are your tribe.
Right.
And so that's rooted in neuroscience, that you're pulling this tribe of people together. And so Reiko and I looked at all of those different nuances and ideas around building tribes, and came up with a book that talks about the different ways that you can do that, with a whole bunch of different cool examples of companies that have done it.
All right, let me ask you a question about it, because even though they are kind of a tribe, I'm not sure people want to be treated like a tribe, like the Dan Kennedy, that's my herd of people. Do people really want to feel like they're just part of a herd?
Well, it is important for all of us to want to feel like we belong. And so, one of the ways that I love to illustrate it is around unlikely product categories. Because often people will have told Reiko and I, okay, I get the fandom thing. Sure, if you're the Boston Red Sox or the Grateful Dead or Harry Potter, I know you get fans, but I work in and they'll say I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm a dentist, I'm an insurance salesman, whatever it is. And I say, well, everybody can develop fans. And my favorite example is Haggerty Insurance. So
Okay.
Haggerty does classic car auto insurance. And I met McKeel Haggerty. He's the entrepreneurial founder of Haggerty Insurance. And McKeel said, when I founded this business, I realized I couldn't sell this business. I couldn't sell to customers in the way that every other insurance company does. I'm not going to spend more money on ads. I'm not going to be the lower cost provider. I'm going to build this business by developing fans, is what he said. And so Haggerty went out and expressly built their business on developing fans. So a couple of things they do is they go to classic car shows around the country, and they're there meeting people. They're part of the tribe that already exists of classic car lovers. And they go to, he and his people, he's got a team, go to over 100 classic car events a year. And they have a YouTube channel with over 1 million subscribers. They have a drivers club where you can, it's an online club where you can mingle with other people who have cars like yours. And they have 650,000 members of the drivers club. So all of these things combined with other things that they do to build fans have made them the largest classic car insurance company in the world. They've grown by double-digit numbers every single year since they started, and this incredibly cool entrepreneurial business. And McKeel said to me, David, it's all built on fandom. It's all built on creating a tribe of people who coalesce around us because we help them to make sense of their classic car hobby.
And this Fanocracy book goes into details on how people implement these things?
Absolutely. A bunch of different steps, ideas, examples, all kinds of different companies.
All right, I'm going to get rid of you off here so I can go order it real quick. Yeah, very, very cool. So everybody,
and we have a bunch of great stories and examples and ideas and things you can download at www.fanocracy.com if anyone's interested in checking it out.
That's FANOCRACY, right?
Yeah, and speaking, you asked me at the top of the show about my regal name, with my middle name being Meerman, and why the hell I've got three names. And I said it was for search engine purposes. The name Fanocracy is exactly the same thing, as is the word newsjacking. So I invented this concept of newsjacking, which is the idea of injecting your ideas into a breaking news story to generate attention.
And I have been spouting that ever since you wrote it in the book. Telling people about it. Yeah,
you have. And I chose the word newsjacking because I wanted to own it. I wanted to own the URL, newsjacking.com. I wanted to own the concept, newsjacking. But importantly, I didn't trademark the word newsjacking because I wanted other people to use it, like you, to be able to freely use it. And as a result of doing that, newsjacking is now so popular that it's been entered into the Oxford English Dictionary. So I invented a concept that's now in the Oxford English Dictionary. How cool is that?
That is
and I did the
cool.
Same thing with Fanocracy. Reiko and I did the same thing with Fanocracy. We wanted a word we could own. We wanted a word that we could own the URL for on the web. We wanted to be able to have a word that if you entered it into Google, you would get us. And that's why we chose the word Fanocracy for the book title.
Beautiful, beautiful. So what's a typical day look like for you since you're not on the road as much?
Oh my God, Groundhog Day. Every day's the same. I get up, I drink some coffee, I check my socials and my email, I do some exercise, eat some breakfast, work all day, and have a glass of wine, go to bed, and do it again.
So this is your not only morning routine, everyday routine.
But that being said, what I love is that every day is different. I love doing what we're doing right now, talking on a podcast with someone super interesting. I love being able to.
What podcast is that? I have to get on that one
too. Screw the commute, man. Let's have some fun, and let's forget the commute. Let's have some fun instead. And I love doing virtual speaking gigs. Do 4 or 5 a month.
Are you getting paid for those? Because a lot of people are trying to transition to that in the speaking world.
I am. I'm lucky there. I'm able to command a speaking fee for virtual events. I love to work, but I don't work for free.
Yeah, no, I
Um,
get it. A lot of people are really struggling, because I've trained, thousands of professional speakers, and they're thinking that, oh, you can't get paid for this. We just have to try to, hope for gigs in the future off of our Zoom events. And I said, no,
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 it's
no.
not. That's not right at all. I
Those
mean,
companies have money. They don't even have anywhere to spend it, since all the newspapers and TV is worthless nowadays.
yeah, and when you think about it, the people who are putting on an event, those are organizations or companies. They're putting on an event, and they'll reach out to me and said, "Hey, David, my company is creating an event. We'd love you to speak." And I go, "Cool. My fee for a virtual event is $10,000." And they say, "Oh, we're not paying speakers fees because." Because we want you to get the exposure. So I'm sorry.
Like, you need it. Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I don't work for free. Are you working for free? Are you getting paid right now? And I don't do that with
Right. I know.
everybody. I'm a nice guy about it, but I think it's really interesting that there are very, very, very few jobs out there where for some reason people expect you to work for free. I mean, I'm not going to ask someone to come and paint my house for free. I'm not going to go get my teeth cleaned and expect the dentist to do it for free. I'm not going to go to the car repair shop and expect them to fix my car for free. I'm not going to go to the restaurant and expect that the pizza is going to be free. Why the heck do people expect that someone will come and speak at their event and
Well,
not
a lot of
pay
the
for it?
nonprofits really play this up. Well, we're nonprofit, and they got more money than God. Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, it's exact. And then, well, so my first reaction is, oh, and so you're working for free? Is that right? And of course, no, I get paid. Well, yeah. You're not working for free at your nonprofit. It's your job. You're getting paid. So I do, on that, all of that being said, I do freebies if it's an organization that I care about. You mentioned Panama, so I've done probably a dozen
Hmm.
presentations related to my love of saving the rainforest of Panama. And I'm happy to support an organization that's important to me, but I'm not going to just support them because they happen to be a nonprofit, unless it's important to me.
Got it. Got it. Well, boy, this has been really great. Thanks so much. So there's loads of tips in here, and I'm really encouraging everybody to. Now, I still want them to get the new rules of marketing and PR, because that's you've been updating it, and then also get Fanocracy, because that's a perfect transition, so they can get both worlds. So thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh, hey, thanks for having me on, Tom. I really appreciate it. I love what you're doing. I think you have the best named podcast of anybody. I mean, it just like sums the whole thing up, doesn't it?
That's it. Yeah, I hit you in the face with it. And
Yeah.
literally, when you see my bio, you think that can't be. That must be a bunch of BS. How could anybody do all that stuff? Well, if you're not sitting in traffic making everybody else rich, you can live 2 or 3 lives.
Can I
So,
tell you about my first commute?
yeah, please.
Oh my God. I was
Wait, your
living in my
first what?
commute.
Okay.
I was living in my parents' house in New Canaan, Connecticut. I got in my I think it was 80 Volkswagen Rabbit, and I drove 10 minutes to the New Canaan train station. I waited about 10 minutes for the train to arrive, got on the train, went an hour and 10 minutes to Grand Central Station, took a 10-minute walk to get to the 456 subway, which I then
Oh
took
my
for
God.
20 minutes down to Wall Street and another 10-minute walk to my office.
Oh
It
my
was
God.
more than 2 hours each direction, door to door, every single day. So 4 hours of commuting time
Jesus.
every single day. I mean, I said, screw this commute within
Hmm.
the first week. I stuck with it. But I'm like, I said, I looked at some guys who had been on this train that I was on for 40 years, right? They've been doing that commute since they got out of college in the 1940s.
Oh my God. Oh, I mean, I'm
And I'm
almost getting
like,
sick to my
no
stomach thinking
freaking
about it.
way,
Yeah.
man. I am gotta engineer myself out of this one.
Yeah, yeah, I'll tell you what, it's just, I mean, I don't deal with anybody I don't like. I just, it's been the lifestyle business for 44 years for me, long before the internet was around even. So, and I actually
Right.
built I was kind of doing a newsjacking thing before that you invented that term, because my whole beginning of my career was I was on radio, TV, and in print. That's how I got my speaking engagements the whole
Right.
time until and when the internet came along in '94, I'm thinking, you mean, it was hard enough to sell back then your cassette tapes across the street, let alone around the world. So
Right.
that's when I saw the commercial internet coming around in '94, and I'm saying, I'm going to figure this out,
Yeah.
and then you combine them both. But I preach this to a lot of speakers because when 9/11 hit, a lot of big name speakers went bankrupt because all
Yes.
they had was speaking. But
Yes.
you remember Dottie Walters? Did you ever hear her?
No, I
She
don't.
was like the grandmother of professional speaking. She wrote the book Speak and Grow Rich.
Oh, I know the book. Yeah.
Yeah, so she was my first mentor in this, and she said, Tom, you got to become a product machine
Yeah.
because there's no downside to it, especially with digital stuff now at 97% profit. You can mess up really bad and still make money. But see, when all the 9/11 hit, so I wasn't speaking, but I still had loads of money coming in from the internet sales. Or I noticed that, hey, this is trouble. And I saw people dropping like flies, and I said, I don't want anybody to ever be in that situation. So,
Yeah, and with the way that I approached it, because I was thinking exactly the same thing, is fortunately, I mentioned to you earlier a couple times that I worked on Wall Street when I first
mhm.
started, and fortunately, I learned a lot about it, how Wall Street works and investing and a bunch of other things. And there's this wonderful concept called the portfolio theory of investing, which is simply that you have to diversify.
Diversify, yeah.
Yeah, it's all about diversification.
Hmm.
So when I started my business 20 years ago, I was totally focused on diversification of my revenue sources. And I said, I never want to be beholden to one revenue source. And that's what happens when you work for a company. When you work for a company, you are either on or off. You either have revenue or you don't have revenue. And the revenue that you have is fixed. It's your salary. And I said, I don't want that. That is not a good way to build wealth because there's not you're not
Hmm.
building a portfolio. So when I started my business 20 years ago, I said, I'm never going to have a sole form of income. So I never got to the point where speaking was anywhere more than about 50% of my
Hmm.
revenue. So
Beautiful.
I have in-person speaking, virtual speaking, book royalties, internet product sales. I have some self-published books as well. And then
Do
I
you have
also
online courses at all?
I do have online
Hmm.
courses. I have one called New Marketing Mastery. I
Oh,
also
good.
have, yeah, and then I also serve on advisory boards of companies. I mentioned to you HubSpot, where I take equity, not cash. So
Hmm.
I have ownership positions in about 25 different companies, and I've had three of them have gone public, and two of them have been acquired. So it's a portfolio theory of my career, and I think that's so important for people to think about. Is when you work for a company, you have a single source of revenue. When you start your own business, to think about how you're going to have multiple sources of revenue. So when COVID hit, yeah, my speaking revenue went down, but my overall revenue only went down a small amount.
Right, and that's the whole thing, that most speakers would be like freaking out, broke, behind on everything by now. But you're like, oh man, it's good. I don't have to get on a plane.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's
right.
the way I feel. Yeah,
Yeah, and because I wasn't getting on a plane, I was able to take on a couple of other projects.
exactly. Yeah,
I joined a couple of other. I've joined three different boards that I wasn't on prior, so that's kind of cool.
yeah. You have to have time that you're not fighting the airport thing. So yeah, it's beautiful, perfect in alignment with what we believe around here. So I got to get your daughter on here though. I got to tell you.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Get a special edition, youth edition. What's she do besides writing a book with you?
She is an emergency doctor at Boston Medical Center.
Oh my God! So she's
She's
been
a resident.
right in the midst of this mess, huh?
She's in the thick of it, and she has spent time in the COVID ICU, which is, she tells me, is brutal.
Oh,
It's like you don't want to end up in the COVID ICU.
oh boy.
But she loves being in emergency medicine because she feels like she can really make a difference with people.
Good for her. Yeah. So yeah, let's get that going. So thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it. I want everybody to get your books and look at your courses and all that stuff. And if there's anybody in big companies, David, like I said, he's been around the horn teaching this stuff. So recommend it to your boss for when things open up, or get a virtual presentation from him. You will not regret it. So thanks so much, man.
Thank you, Tom. This is great fun.